15 days and 3 countries. I flew into Italy from Chicago and took the express train into Rome. I woke up early to see the Spanish Steps at sunrise, and I was rewarded with being virtually the only one there. On my walk back, I found a wonderful patisserie and had to have a treat. Then it was time to get ready for the day and a trip to Vatican City. Although I'm not Catholic, it was quite incredible to see Vatican City, the map room, the Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's Basilica. It was incredible to think that I had walked in the footsteps of popes. After I mailed myself a postcard from the souvenir shop, it was time for lunch, pizza. I tried visiting the Borghese Museum, but it was already sold out, so I just got a nice walk in the park before I headed to Central Market. As I snacked my way around the Central Market, I knew I wanted to try soupli, similar to arancini, but they are bigger, crunchier, and have more fun fillings, such as cacio e pepe and carbonara. After an Aperol Spritz and tiramisu, it was time to get ready for dinner. Suggested by TikToker Italy with Jenna, I was having dinner at La Locanda di Aggiugno. I came for the cacio e pepe. One day I'll come back for the ravioli. The next morning, I took a guided tour of the Colosseum, Roman Forum, and Palatine Hill. Yesterday, I had walked in the footsteps of popes. Today, I was walking in the footsteps of gladiators. Then it was time to collect my luggage and take the short train ride to Florence. I was staying near the market, so after I checked in, I took a walk around and explored Florence. I found this incredible truffle shop where I could sample truffles done many ways. The shopkeeper really was a truffle expert. For dinner, I took the recommendation from a local and had dinner at Enzo e Piero. Outstanding. It made my truffle dreams come true. And tiramisu too. The next day started with a visit to the Uffizi Museum. When I found myself walking down the same street I was on the night before, I took it as fate and needed to have lunch at the same restaurant I'd had dinner at the night before. Then it was off to spend the afternoon wine tasting at nearby Chianti vineyards. Florence is located in Tuscany, a famous wine region of Italy. Its Chiantis are known around the world. The next morning, it was time to catch the train north. I stopped in Bologna for lunch and treated myself at Ristorante Diana. Opened in 1919, it is considered a Bologna institution known for its white tablecloth service and tableside theatrics. After a train delay, I arrived a little later into Venice than I had expected. I missed my planned evening activity, but it gave me the luxury to meander around the canals of Venice. A friend recommended Osteria al Ponte, so I finished my day with cicchetti and a dry white. The next morning started by buying a Venetian mask before I headed to St. Mark's Square. Although the basilica was closed, I got to visit Doge's Palace. Here I walked in the footsteps of prisoners. After lunch and a Hugo Spritz, it was time for a gondola ride through the canals of Venice. More cicchetti. I didn't have time for a proper dinner. I had to get ready to attend a concerto at Theatre La Fenice, one of the most famous and renowned landmarks in the history of Italian theater and in the history of opera as a whole. The morning started early as I left Venice on a high-speed train to Milan. In Milan, I had lunch and then went to the main station to take a train along the length of Lake Como to Calico, where I would then take a bus to Tirano. Because of a train strike, I arrived later than I had planned, but I was very grateful I had made it. After a walk around the small mountain town, I decided on pizza for dinner. The next morning, it was time to board the Bernina Express and take the scenic train route in panoramic cars to Chur, Switzerland. The route through the Swiss Alps is a UNESCO World Heritage Site through 55 tunnels and over 196 bridges. After arriving in Chur on the Bernina Express, I took another train to Zurich HB, Zurich's main train station. After I got settled in, I took a boat ride around Lake Zurich before having dinner in Old Town. The next day, everything revolved around the entire reason for this trip. I had lunch from a delicious Greek food truck and met some fellow Swifties. Then it was time to change and get ready to see Taylor Swift and the Eras tour. The next morning, I stumbled upon Bros, Beans, and Beats, and I'm sure glad I did. It was the perfect fuel to get me going for night 2 on the floor. To help get over the passing of my Eras concert experiences, the next day I took an excursion to Lucerne and Mount Titlis. After a brief stop in Lucerne, we arrived in Engelberg. It takes 2 gondola rides to get to the top of Mount Titlis. Some of my favorite views came from the viewing platform and cliff walk. I also took the Ice Flyer chairlift to Glacier Park and had to go tubing. I finished with visiting the Glacier Cave. The next day, I only had 2 things planned: to get from my Airbnb in Zurich to my Airbnb in Paris, and to make my dinner reservation. Arnold was a perfect guide for a bike tour of Versailles. The small group of 8 took the train from Paris. We began the day by gathering picnic supplies at Versailles Farmers Market. Once we had our picnic supplies, we collected our bikes and off we rode to Versailles. I couldn't imagine a better and more fun way to see the palace's grounds while learning about the history of Versailles. Already exhausted from the bike tour and picnicking next to the Grand Canal, it was time to return the bikes and see the great opulence of Versailles Palace itself before returning to Paris. I had walked in the footsteps of kings and queens. The next day was Bastille Day. On my walk to visit Luxembourg Gardens, I was delighted to happen upon the Olympic flame passing through the streets of Paris. I wanted to see the fireworks for Bastille Day. I knew that with Olympic closings, Paris would be crowded, so I booked a boat cruise to watch the fireworks from the Seine. It included charcuterie, champagne, macaroons, and a great view of the Eiffel Tower. When I watched the Olympics, I had traveled the same path as the Olympians during the opening ceremonies. The next morning, I stopped for breakfast and then headed to Père Lachaise Cemetery. I visited Jim Morrison and Oscar Wilde's tombs. Visiting the cemetery seemed like an appropriate last activity before returning to the U.S. the next day, since the entire trip made me feel like I had died and gone to heaven.